gives me anxiety.
So you quit your full-time job making 70 grand a year.
I'm getting by.
When you quit, did you have money saved up?
I'm not really sure what an asset was. Probably not much.
You put $70,000 on the sheet. Does that sound about accurate?
I had a couple random gigs just trying to get on my feet there.
I don't know anyone that can live off $35 a month in food, especially living in LA.
With the exception of that one whoopsie I made, obviously the bank didn't give a... I didn't have a credit card for the longest time because we were just so against debt.
You're going to be basically down to zero. This isn't going to be a sustainable pace.
I wish I'd known about like paying it off. My name's Zoquera. I live in Los Angeles and I'm 33 years old.
What do you do for work?
I am currently a full-time actress and model.
And how long have you been doing that for?
Full-time, I've been doing it since June, but I've been doing it part-time for like over a decade.
Okay, what made you make the leap into doing it full-time?
So I used to work at a really crazy popular bar. I worked there for 6 years and the money was great, but I got really burned out on it. And so I decided to just quit and see if I could hack it without a survival job and just go full on into entertainment.
And when you quit, did you have money saved up? Were you making money on the acting stuff?
I was making money here and there on the acting stuff. I was putting aside savings every month from the bar job. So I wasn't starting at zero when I quit. I'd been saving, every month. So I had a bit of a cushion for sure.
Okay. And what was your income at your bar job before you quit?
Probably at least like 70 grand or so a year.
What was your income acting when you quit?
Once again, it varies a lot, but it wasn't much, maybe like a couple $100 here and there a month.
Oh, wow. So you quit your full-time job making 70 grand a year to dive into something full-time making a couple $100 a month.
Yes, sir.
That gives me anxiety. Well, walk me through that. How's that been the last 6 months then?
It's been really good. It gives me anxiety too. Definitely a lifestyle change. But I've been paying my bills every month. So I've been making it work, but I'm not just rolling in, the cash anymore. Whereas I used to have so much expendable income, like I never really thought about going out or if I wanted a new dress or something, it was like, whatever. Or like the best skincare products, but now I'm, shopping the sales and very mindful of all that stuff.
Okay. And what would you say your current income has been on average the last 6 months since you quit? Has it been ramping up? What does that look like? Especially with the writer's strike and acting strike going on, I'm sure it hasn't been the easiest thing in the world.
So it's been ramping up. This past month or so was very good. I'm not sure what the holidays will bring, but I have a feature film filming this month that's going to be profitable and some other things that are potentially in the works that looks like it's going to get me through the end of the year without having to dip into savings or anything.
Okay. How much are you going to pay for that feature film?
So it's going to be at least $2,100. It's going to be more if they need me for more days.
Okay, nice. So one thing, $2,100, but then you have, what do the other rest of the month look like?
So I'm filming a commercial on Friday that's going to pay $300. I'm waiting to get paid. I'm waiting on payment from another commercial I shot 2 weeks ago. That's going to be about $800. I'm waiting on payment for this user-generated content thing I filmed a few weeks ago. That's going to be $250. So I'm waiting for some payments to come in and then some things that I haven't shot yet. So I'm just looking at the overall, where I'll be at in November, and it's looking pretty good.
Okay, so payment, I guess the question is, obviously with clients paying net 30, net 60, whatever payment terms you're on, you got to pay bills in that current month, and that's just always going to be a cycle. So right now you'll get paid hopefully the $800, the $250, the commercial this Friday. I don't know when you'll get paid for that. And the feature film, I'm assuming that won't be at least till December.
Yep. Oh, no. So the feature, it's like this, this isn't necessarily standard, but it's, there's a lot of new media content coming from China, and I will get paid on the last day of filming for that.
Okay. So you're expecting to get that $2,100 this month then?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so should bring in hopefully $3,000 this month, but then I guess it all depends on December where you shake out because it's project by project basis. So it really depends on what you kind of get cast for over the next 30 days. Actually, with the holidays, I'm assuming there's probably not too much action happening filming wise in December's.
Yeah, December is usually pretty slow for casting because all the offices basically go on hiatus for until like the new year. So it could be really a quiet month. I'm hoping there's a couple things I've submitted to that it looks like filming the first week of December or so. So I'm hoping to get at least a couple of commercial gigs and maybe some like user generated content gigs as well.
Okay, and that will push into January too, because if people are out for holidays in December, it's going to push into January before we start getting stuff. So what would you say is a conservative guesstimate in terms of your income for December and January?
I mean, it's so week by week.
I think we're looking at like $500 or we're looking at like $1,500.
I mean, there's no way to predict the future, but let's say $500 in December. I don't know. I have no idea. This is my first December ever doing this, So I don't know. Because it also depends what else I book this month. It's only the 2nd. So I could book, 6 gigs this month and be getting that money rolling in December, even if I'm not filming in December.
No, understood. It all depends on project by project basis, and you're gonna have to be applying to a lot of different things to try to get some income, because making $500 in December in Los Angeles is not cheap. So that means you're gonna be dipping into savings, or you gotta be figuring out what else can you do to generate income during that time.
Yeah, savings probably if it comes down to that.
Well, on that note, let's talk about your current financial situation. So just kind of talk through your current income situation, fluctuating, being a freelancer, working in the acting world. How would you rate your current situation? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being horrific, 10 being picture perfect.
1 to 10. I would put myself at like a 6 or a 7.
And why do you say that?
Because I'm getting by. I'm paying my bills. I'm able to live fairly comfortably, but I'm not, I haven't yet been able to put any in savings, which is what I used to doing every month. So I want to get to the place where I'm in not just paying all my bills, but like in excess.
So let's talk about current debts and assets. Do we have any debt right now? Credit cards, car loans, student loans, personal loans?
No.
And assets. What assets do we have?
I guess I'm not really sure what an asset was. Like I rent an apartment, so that's not an asset. I have a car.
What's your car worth?
Probably not much. It's like a 2016 Jeep Renegade. Well, I bought it in cash in 2018, and I think it was like 17 grand when I bought it. I'm not sure what it would be worth now. That was some time ago.
Looking online, it looks like, I guess they range depending on how many miles from, I see some around $10,000. I see some that are about $18,000. How many miles does yours have on it?
I want to say like roughly 60.
Okay, so I put about $15,000 depending on what trim it is, 15 to 18,000. So we'll be conservative and put 15,000. Okay. And any investments?
So I have an Acorns account. I don't know if that counts. And then I also, the Acorns account doesn't really count for much right now. And then I also have investments with UBS.
Okay, and how much is in the Acorns account?
Not a lot right now. I have an automatic $5 withdrawal every week that it does. And then it also does like roundups. Boy, probably not more than like $1,000 in there right now.
And then your investments with UBS, how much do you have in there right now?
I would have to call my financial advisor.
You put $70,000 on the sheet. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, probably about that. I mean, obviously, the market's been a little crazy. At one point, I had closer to 100 in there, or at least like closer to 90. So I don't know the exact breakdown of those because I'm very hands off with that. I don't touch it. I don't look at it. I don't think about it.
Glad you got some investments in there. Do you know if it's taxable brokerage accounts, if it's Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs? Nope, don't know. Okay. We're gonna talk a little bit about investing today because it's great that you have about $71,000 between your investment account and then your Acorns account. You need to make sure you understand what's in there, what the fees are associated with it as well, and just at least have a brief overarching understanding of what you're invested in because it's your money. And yes, you have someone you're working with on that, but you still need to understand what you're doing, what they're doing for you if you have a financial advisor. And we'll also talk about financial advisor fees later as well.
I also have my Chase savings account. I don't know.
Okay. And Chase Savings, how much is in there?
9,500.
Okay, so that means between the car and the investment accounts and savings, we've got about 95,500 in assets, and we've got zero debt. So I put your net worth at $95,500. Does that sound about right? Have you ever calculated your net worth before?
Yeah, I don't really think about assets, but I've definitely looked at the totals of what I have.
Okay. Off the bat, you put yourself at 6 or 7. I think you're starting off in that ballpark. Definitely, when you got close to $100,000 net worth, which is great, but I'm concerned more on the income side, just you moving forward, because you got to pay the bills. Living in LA and making $500 a month with acting is not a easy place to live. So let's take it back to college. You go to college, and if so, what'd you study?
Yes, I went to college. I got my BFA in theater performance.
Okay. And any student loans through college or no?
No, my parents paid for it.
And so career goals. Obviously, you quit the bar job and went acting full time. Is that the lifelong dream and aspiration, is be a full time actor forever?
Yeah, that certainly has been the dream, hence my college major, etc. I've been doing it for like 15 years. As I get into my 30s, obviously things have shifted some, but I think I'll always do it in some capacity. There's no other career that obviously I've been dying to do, or else I'm sure I would be doing it.
What did you do, I guess, since graduation in college to now? Obviously worked at the bar for 6 years. What did you do the other prior, I guess, about 6 or 7 years?
So when I first graduated, I moved to Chicago, and I had a couple random gigs just trying to get on my feet there. I was a cocktail waitress at a comedy club, and then I got a job at Walgreens corporate headquarters as in the recruitment department as like basically an assistant, and I did that for like a year and a half or so, and then I quit for a few months, and then I got a job at a breakfast restaurant, and that's pretty much my work history. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I got the bar job, and that's the only job I've had here, other than I did some brief like cater waitering before I found that job.
What would you put as your future career financial like goals that you have for yourself?
I'd love to just get to a point where I'm saving money, and like I would like to, buy a house at some point, hopefully, and have that as, an asset.
Do you see yourself living in LA forever and wanting to buy a house in LA? Or do you see yourself moving to another city? Because frankly, LA houses are insane.
Yeah, they're totally insane. No, I don't see myself staying here forever. I'm currently single, but I hope to at some point get married and settle down. And I'm assuming that's not going to happen in LA. So I'm going through a lot of big life transitions right now. I was originally thinking of moving back to Texas where my family is, but I decided to try this for a while and just see what happens. I don't know what I would do in Texas for money. So right now I'm sort of in a weird limbo where I'm not exactly sure what the future holds for me or where I'm going to end up.
Makes sense. I mean, life changes, life happens, and you might not want to stay in the same place. And also, when it comes to buying a house, don't go buying a house if you don't see yourself living in that same area for 5 or 10 years. So at least you can use that on your side. If you don't know where you're going to go, then that can allow you to have some flexibility with renting and figure out where you want to go. When it comes to childhood upbringing, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. My whole family is there. My father is a financial advisor as well as my grandfather. I have one sibling. I don't know. We grew up in the suburbs, and I guess it was a pretty typical childhood. I went to a private preparatory high school.
And growing up, did your parents talk to you about money?
Excessively, yes. My father wouldn't let us get our allowance until we could count change back to him. Like, we had to understand math and like change before he would let us have an allowance, which was a real bummer for me because I hated math when I was a little kid. So my brother got his allowance quicker than me because I couldn't figure out change. But that changed as I got older. Yeah, since he is my financial advisor. I've had a savings account since I was probably, a fetus, if not before. And it was always taught to us, like, you don't touch that. So I just put like the UBS stuff. I just put money in there. I only touched it like once or twice. Like when I bought my car, I used my savings. That way I didn't have a car loan. And yeah, so every, a couple times a year, I'll take from my working savings and give it to dad to invest. And I know he has like some of my money in a CDC right now that he's been renewing. So that's making, some interest and such.
So he's instilled some good financial principles in you. It sounds like, with buying cars cash, you don't have a car payment. Did you learn that from your dad?
Yeah. There's sort of just like the whole credit card debt thing, and loans or debt of any sort was like a huge no-no. So I've never had debt.
I love it. I love that he's taught you that, because that's something majority of Americans need. That's why I started the show, because we got credit card debts over $1 trillion in America right now. We got people up to their eyeballs in $800 a month car payments, and it just puts you in a sinking ship, because you're guaranteed locked into these payments until you pay them off. And that's not a fun situation for anyone. And obviously, some people think it's impossible to go buy a car cash, or they think it's impossible to get a credit card debt, but it really comes down to having a plan, sticking to that plan, and hustling to get out of it. So, because no one else is going to get rid of your debt or just make it disappear overnight. So I'm glad that your dad's instilled those principles in you, because it's what we need more in this world. So I'm glad he's talked a lot about money growing up. And I was fortunate in a household that my parents talked about money too. I took a Dave Ramsey course, if you're familiar with him, when I was in high school, when I was 16 years old. And he helped me start just learning, get on my financial education journey. That's something we need more of in this world. So, well, let's talk about your current monthly expenses then, because right now we're saying you're making about $500 a month to $1,500. Really depends. This month's gonna be a little bit higher, about $2,000 or $3,000. It's fluctuating. Let's talk about your current monthly expenses. So I'm gonna kind of go through these that you sent over to me.
Okay.
So we've got rent, $1,300. We got utilities, about $70. We got $234 worth of car insurance.
Oh, I just changed that.
That changed? What's that now?
I just switched car insurance because it was just so expensive. So I just switched this week, actually. So it's going to be, well, I just paid in full. That way I didn't have, they charge you a few dollars more a month if you do. So I paid for the full 6 months up front, it's like so much less than I was paying with Allstate. Allstate was so expensive, and people kept telling me I needed to switch. So I finally looked into it. So it was $378.18
For 6 months?
for 6 months.
Oh, wow. That's super cheap. $63? That is a huge swing from $234, whatever it was. I was going to say $234 is definitely expensive. Mine's about $100, I think, per car between my wife and I, so $200 total. But $63 is cheap, so.
This is Geico, and I don't know if I picked the best car insurance or not. I just picked what was cheap.
Well, I'd make sure you look through and understand what you sign up for. Make sure you have the things that you need to and the coverage you do, because that's a situation you don't want to be into, is get too little of insurance, and that comes back to bite you in the long run. So then we got groceries, $30 a month. You only spend $30 a month on groceries?
No, that doesn't sound right.
You put $30 for groceries and $5 for eating out, which I don't know anyone that can live off $35 a month in food, especially living in LA.
$5 eating out would probably be, I just don't go out anymore. So I would say for groceries, I don't know. I'm trying to keep it low. Maybe like $300 a month.
And eating out, what do you think that is?
They usually zero, but about once or twice maybe in the last 5 months. I just can't think of a time. Like if I've gone out, someone else has paid for it.
We'll leave that at $5 for now then. So we got your total necessities between housing, auto and transportation, and groceries at $1,813, which is more than our current projected income for the next couple months. We got subscriptions, $100, eating out $5, personal care $15, pet $10. So it brings your total fund money to $130. So it sounds like you've cut that back drastically. So it brings your total expenses to $1,943. Does that sound about right for what you're spending on a monthly basis right now?
That sounds a little high to me. Sure. Maybe on a high month.
Okay. What part of it sounds a little bit high, do you think?
Maybe like the subscriptions. Like I'm just paying for the most expensive subscriptions I have are for the casting websites that I'm part of. But those are just like an annual fee because once again, I pay for it, all at once. So you save. So if I don't know, I would put that closer to like 50 or 60 tops a month.
Okay. And no shopping at all?
Other than groceries, I mean, I have to buy, like toilet paper and stuff. I haven't bought anything fun really.
Nothing fun.
I bought myself like a new dress for my birthday. But I got like a really cheap one on Amazon.
Okay, so there's some shopping there. That's okay. We'll talk about it. We'll look through your different monthly expenses. But can you kind of tell me about your current budgeting process, if any, that you have right now? Looking at your monthly expenses and tracking those.
Yeah, so I have like a log. I have a monthly log where every time I work a shoot, I draw a green box with a Sharpie, put the project name, and then once the payment comes in, I write how much I got for that project, and that way I can kind of keep track of like which projects haven't paid me yet, and I have just like keep following up with them. And then I'm just always like doing the math of, doing the addition in my head of where I should be by the time bills are due and where I'm at with my credit cards and rent. And then, yeah, just trying to be frugal as far as my spending.
Do you use any budgeting tools or platforms like that track all your monthly expenses, categorize them, or anything like that? No. That's one thing I definitely suggest doing. I use a platform called men.com, but I actually found out today that they're shutting it down at the end of this year. So I'm not happy about that. So I got to find a new platform. But I would suggest doing that because that way you can actually see how much you're spending on shopping, on groceries, on eating out, whatever, categorized for you every single month. And you have to look through and just make sure it's placed in the proper categories. That way you can actually have a holistic picture and idea of, hey, this is how much you actually spend every single month, especially at a time where your income's has been cut drastically the last few months by quitting your job. You need to understand where every single cent that you're spending is going, because your income's fluctuating, your income's down compared to before, and you really need to have a full grasp on your picture to make sure that you don't put yourself in a situation where you're pulling money out of savings or you're carrying a balance on a credit card. Those are the last things I don't want you to do. That's the last things your dad would want you to do. That's the last things you want to do, is start pulling from savings, start ripping that, and at least having a tool that's calculating or tracking your spending. That will help you give at least just a lot more insights into it. So if you get halfway through the month and say you're blowing through your food budget, you understand, okay, I need to slow down these next couple weeks. And you might not think that the little $20 or $30 transactions that you add up at the grocery store, but if you do that multiple times in a month, or 10 times or 20 times, it really starts adding up. So suggestion number one for you is, hey, make sure you're budgeting, because you need to just understand where your money's going in. I'm sure your dad, who's a financial advisor, budgets money. He understands how much he spends on every single category every single month. He understands where it's going, when the bills are due, and everything else in between. And you need to have that same plan too, to just understand your finances a little bit more. So you can sit here and I can say, hey, how much did you spend on groceries last month? Or how much did you spend on shopping last month? And you kind of understand those numbers just because you look at your budget once a week. And it doesn't have to be an intensive process. It just has to be something that you have set up, and then it becomes automated and becomes a lot less work as you kind of go along. Does that make sense?
Do you have any other suggestions for apps that do that?
So I'm looking at two right now, because I'll have to transition at the end of this year. Copilot is one of them. I think they're like $70 a year. Mint, I use Mint because it was free. I love free apps, but it's going away. So Copilot's one that I've heard good things about. And then Every Dollar, Dave Ramsey owns Every Dollar. I've heard good things about that. I'm still looking at other options too out there just to see what my options are, because I liked some of the features that Mint had. So I got to see if these other ones contain it and like this. But I basically found out about Mint.com transitioning out this morning. So I've only done a few minutes looking at different things today. So
Yeah, for sure.
but if I find a good one, I'll send it over to you so you can check it out. So
Okay, cool.
So let's talk about your current monthly expenses, because you sent these over, and we'd like to understand what's your current picture. It looks like you have a couple different credit cards,
Yeah, I have a total right now of 3.
and paying these off every single month in full, it looks like.
Yeah, with the exception of that one whoopsie I made like a month ago.
What happened there?
So I had to take my car to the shop, and it was like almost $3,000, and it was like over 2,500. It was a ton of money. And it was just a couple months after I'd quit my job. And because I've always paid my credit cards off in full every month, I didn't know that if you didn't, they charged you. So I was putting like $1,000 towards it, like the first 2 months. And then I saw like a 60 something dollar charge interest. And I literally didn't know what it was because I'd never not paid off my cards in full. And so my dad and I had a little talk about that because he was like, oh, I just assumed you knew. And I was like, I didn't know because I've never not just paid it in full. So that was a learning moment, which cost me, obviously the bank didn't give a crap that I didn't know. So that will never happen again. But yeah, that was the only time that's happened.
I see that $64.65 charge on September 11th. So just under 2 months ago. But yeah, I'm glad you've never carried a balance before, but let's make that the last time that ever happens, because credit card companies, frankly, they love it because they're charging you 28, 29% interest rates on the balances that you're carrying. And they'll take late fees, they'll take missed payments, whatever, all day, because that's how they make their money. So
Yep, that makes sense.
what I tell people is if you ever carry balance on a credit card, don't use a credit card, because that's how you'll spend money on things that you can't afford. And you look at America today, we got $1 trillion worth of credit card debt. I can promise you 99% of the people that open up those credit cards said, oh, I'm going to get this credit card to earn rewards, I'm not going to carry a balance on it. Then they find themselves carrying a balance on it. So especially in your current situation with income levels, credit cards can be a dangerous game, because if you start, I'd implore you to never put yourself in a situation where you carry balance, because if you start doing that with your income being fluctuating and say, oh, I'm going to depend on a credit card just for this month or carry balance just for this month, it'll just open up that door to put yourself in a repeating cycle that just gets out of hand really quickly. So
Yeah, I didn't have a credit card for the longest time because it was like so against debt, like growing up and stuff. And so the one thing I feel like my father should have done was encourage me to get a credit card sooner, because I didn't have one until I was like 27 or something crazy. I never had one. And out here in LA, trying to find an apartment without credit is like, or without being able to prove that you have good credit because you don't have a credit card, is really hard. So I got one a few years ago, but it was actually maybe only like 3 or 4 years ago that I got my first credit card, just so I could start, improving my credit score.
I think your dad doing it the way he did is probably a good thing too, because I've seen a lot of people that got credit cards in college. I mean, I had a friend that maxed out a credit card in college because he didn't understand credit cards. He walked past one of the booths one day on campus. I go, sign for this credit card, and he ended up maxing out $1,000, $2,000 within the next couple weeks, and realized, oh, I have to pay this back and some, and it's just accruing interest. Frankly, people holding out of having credit cards until they have a full-time job, full-time income, they already have a budget in place, they're already living below their means. It's like, okay, maybe looking at a credit card at that time is a good option. But I've seen way too many people open up credit cards too early, not understanding what they are, not having a budget. And that's the worst thing you do, is open a credit card without a budget, without a full-time income, because then you're just going to depend on it, or you're going to swipe it and spend a lot more money than you think, versus you have a debit card, physically can't go on a $1,000 shopping spree on Amazon without having that money in your bank account. So I think it puts good precautions. But then also, to what you said, is you can't be in situations where it's difficult to, I guess, main things credit score matters is sometimes landlords look at it. Like your reference, I've had a landlord ask for my credit before too in the past. And then mortgage payments. Besides that, credit scores only matter when you're taking on debt with car loans, credit card debt, like if you're trying to open new lines of credits or whatever. And it's just people over glorify the credit score in America, in my opinion, and puts people in large financial holes. So, but I'm glad you learned that lesson. I'm glad it's only a $64 lesson, so that you don't have to make a larger mistake in your future. So,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's go through some of these different transactions. I see 7-Eleven, so you're getting gas. We got Lyft. Why are you taking Lyft right now in LA when you got your car?
Drinking.
Drinking. Okay, well, being responsible then. I can't hate you for that one.
There should be more Lyft charges on there than there are. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
There's no public transportation in LA, so it's a real nightmare.
Well, be safe and be responsible then. Besides that, we got your Wi-Fi. We got that $64 charge. We got groceries for $25. We got more groceries, utilities, Trader Joe's, more 7-Eleven, more Trader Joe's. We do have your one coffee for $3.75. It looks like you got on September 25th. So there's your $5 of eating out you had in your budget.
There you go. That must have been, I must have been meeting someone or something. Yeah, because I would never do that on my own.
We got Amazon for $20 on September 16th. Okay. And then we got Amazon again for $35 and Amazon for $12.
Oh, well, the 35 might have been my dress for my birthday if it was close to Labor Day week.
Okay. Yeah, that was right before Labor Day weekend. And then another $12 Amazon. So, I mean, you said at the beginning of this is you cut down your spending drastically, and can definitely see that. I do see Hulu for $8. I'm trying to see what other subscriptions you have on here, but I think that's the only one I saw.
Yeah, I was paying for Netflix and Hulu, but then my brother took over the Netflix. So right now I'm just paying for Hulu as far as entertainment subscriptions. But I do have my casting subscriptions, and then I have a Duolingo Spanish app subscription.
Okay. And then I see some Ubers on here as well. $30 worth of Ubers.
It might have been, yeah, because I've traveled a few times. I might have been taking Ubers to the airport.
I mean, your monthly spending is, like you said, you've cut that down drastically. It doesn't look anything outrageous. Eating out, the only charge was the coffee subscription. I saw Hulu, some of the different platforms you have on for work, but nothing crazy on the front. 3 Amazon purchases sounds like birthday gift, sounds like cat food, and then something else that don't know what it is, but your spending is not outrageous. So that's good. You've adjusted your lifestyle down from when you're making a lot more money to where it is now, which is good. But the downside of it is right now is, I guess my concerns for you right now is just obviously the income level first and foremost, because right now, even at bare bones, you're going to be spending just under $2,000 a month. And for you to be able to not pulling from savings, you got to be bringing in $2,500 a month because you got to be putting aside money for taxes as well. And working freelance, working as a contractor with these different acting companies, you're going to get 1099. You're going to have to pay taxes on that money next year. And so honestly, I would suggest, especially living in California, I'd probably be putting aside 25%. So if you're making $2,500, really that puts you about $1,875 for you to keep as your net income. So that's where my biggest concern for you is you have obviously have had great financial discipline and stability to get to this point, having about $100,000 net worth and doing that even without having a budget that you kind of use every single month. But right now with your income lower, you have to figure out how to get that up a lot quicker and get it up because you've been doing it for 6 months. And what I would suggest for you is you got to put yourself on a timeline too. And I want you to pursue your passion. I want you to pursue your dreams. But you always have to be realistic at the same time is, okay, maybe you set a goal for end of this month. If you hit $3,000, whatever it is from this feature film plus some of these other ones, okay, great. That buys you time for December that you plan it out. If you make $1,000 in December, you can cover almost all of November, December living expenses. And then if you don't have stuff coming in for January, you got to start looking at part-time jobs in January. Because last thing I want you to do is start pulling money from your savings because you got $9,000 in there right now, but we just talked about about $2,000 or $3,000 car repair that you just ran into. And who knows what's going to happen in March. If you start depleting that savings and it goes from $9,000 down to $4,000, and then another car incident comes up, then guess what? You're basically down to zero. And that's not a spot I want you to be in. So you got to be realistic with yourself for the next probably 60 to 90 days and put realistic goals as, okay, by December, I want to hit this number in monthly income. By January, I want to hit this or have this locked in for January, or I need to start looking at part-time jobs and opportunities to at least keep yourself afloat. And maybe it's not working full-time at a place. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a hourly place that you can get paid $15 to $20 an hour and you're working 20 hours a week. When you go work 20 hours a week for $20 an hour, it's about $1,600 a month before taxes. So about $1,000, we'll call it $1,200 you'll be receiving post-taxes. And that at least floats you up. So if you're making $1,000, $1,500 from acting, you can at least pay your bills. So I'd say you need to put yourself on realistic timelines and goals. And that's also going to make you hustle and start being able to quantify your acting stuff as well right now. Because right now, if you're just saying, hey, I want to just pay my bills every single month, but you have nothing to track it against. But if you say, hey, I have a 60-day timeline to get this in a spot where I'm able to pay my bills and some every single month, then you're going to have that date marked on your calendar and you're going to feel more pressure, which is going to make you figure out how to make that happen. So that's my biggest concern right now is this isn't going to be a sustainable pace if you don't get big projects, if you don't get consistent work, especially with the holidays. I'm worried from that aspect because December, January, just from my understanding, is going to be slow months because of the holidays. I mean, it is a majority of industries when you're trying to get new gigs and new projects. So I'd really just consider putting yourself on strict timelines to be able to do that. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. It's good to look ahead and have it kind of mapped out.
Yeah, just so you know goals and you have that goal and it's like, okay, if you hit it January 1st or January 15th, whatever you put that date as, then great. Keep hustling, keep trying to pursue this. But if you don't hit it, okay, great. What does that mean? I need to start going to XYZ retail shops this week and see if I can get part-time work to be able to pay the bills come February 1st. And then, okay, while you're working the retail job, continue to hustle on the acting stuff. And once you kind of hit another threshold, then you can look at what does that mean for you. But that's my biggest concern in anyone in the freelance world, in the contracting world, in the acting world, with stuff fluctuating up and down. You need to have cash reserves. So I wouldn't try to pull money out of your savings right now because you need cash reserves when you do have bad months, even when it's not the holiday season, and also when life happens and cars need repairs or something needs to be replaced. And then the other thing is I don't know when your lease is due. I don't know if you have roommates. Do you have roommates right now?
I've lived alone for over a decade.
That's another tough thing too, because I mean, right now your rent is your largest expense. So it's like you can't cut down groceries much more. You can't cut down gas much more. But if this means, hey, I want to pursue my acting career, and if you can get your rent from $1,300 down to $700, $800 by finding a roommate where you split a 2-bedroom place, that's something you can consider too when the time comes. Obviously, if you're in the middle of the lease, you'd have to break that lease or whatever it is, have fees associated with it. But rent right now, making your current income is a big stretch on the budget. And I mean, typically a lot of people say don't spend more than 30% of your net income on rent. And so that means you have to be bringing about $4,000 a month for your current rental levels.
Yeah, but in LA, I'm paying less than people who live with 5 roommates.
Frankly, I was expecting to have roommates because LA is such an expensive place. And I'm not saying if you're going to go live with roommates and your rent was going to be more expensive, that would never make sense to do. But I'm just saying things that you can consider if you say 6 months from now when your lease ends and say you're still fighting, you're like $500 off, and maybe your roommate at that time is an option to get you in a spot where you're able to cover your bills and some. Just something to consider. But my goal for you would be, hey, how do you get yourself in a spot where you're making $3,000-$4,000 a month so that rent isn't even a topic here? And $1,300, if you're making $3,000 to $4,000, can at least pay all your bills, start saving some money, and some on top of that. LA is an expensive place to live. So, I mean, stretching that even to 40% wouldn't be necessarily the end of the world because it'd be $1,200 more a month than you have right now that you're spending. But you have to figure out how to do that because I don't want you to be living where you're making $2,000 a month and $1,300 of that is going towards rent because you're going to be living like you are right now and you're never going to be able to go out. You're never going to be able to eat out. You're never going to be able to save money because rent is expensive in LA. So,
yeah.
Let's talk about investing. So your dad, obviously a financial advisor, investing, but it sounds like he kind of handles everything for you and you don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of what he's doing. Is that correct?
So I trust him with my money.
And I think that's awesome that you have him as a resource and have him to put your money into work, whatever he's doing. But my suggestions would be you need to sit down with your dad and have him walk you through what is he invested in for you. What are these different things? What are the implications of them? Do you have retirement accounts? Are they Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs? Are they just taxable brokerage accounts? Because whether your dad quits being a financial advisor one day or whatever happens, I mean, you need to understand where your money's going, what's happening with it, and what it's invested in. Because no one's going to look after your money as much as you do. I'm sure your dad's a phenomenal guy, but you have your best interest in heart. And he does too. Obviously, he's your father, but it's just better for you to understand where your money is going, what it's invested in, so that when you are on your own, or say you get married one day, your spouse might not want your dad involved in your finance. And that would be a conversation to have at that point, but it'd also be good for you to just have understanding of finances yourself so that you can be out on your own and you can prop yourself up and understand what you're invested in. So that'd be my suggestion on the financial side. And also ask your dad. I'm curious too, because this is something people always ask when it comes to financial advisors. I'm assuming he's not because he's your dad, but ask if there's any advisory fees associated with it as well. That's something that people don't understand when they work with financial advisors is there are fees associated with it, whether it's 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%. But understand that with your dad too, just so you can understand what that fee is. And say your dad retires and he rolls it over to a friend who's working at the firm, they might not waive the fees like your dad is right now, potentially. So just to understand those implications too, for when your dad retires or whatever. Has your dad taught you much about like single stocks versus index funds as well?
No.
So I'll give you the brief rundown. So single stocks is, think of buying a share of Apple, Amazon, Tesla. So you put $200 and you buy X number of shares for a single company, versus an index fund is you're buying essentially a basket of stocks. So the S&P 500 is the 500 largest companies in America. So if you buy an index fund that is encapsulating the S&P 500, your one share of that fund owns bits and pieces of 500 different stocks. So if one company goes bankrupt or explodes and goes downhill, then guess what? You're de-risked because you own bits and pieces of 499 other companies. And frankly, Warren Buffett, by far probably the greatest investor of all time, he suggests 99% of people should be investing in index funds because they're not going to outperform the market. They're not going to read balance sheets of companies with their earnings. So I'll just make sure you understand what is your dad invested in. Is invested in single stocks? Is invested in index funds? You mentioned CDs earlier. Obviously, with interest rates right now, CDs are 5-6% that you can get on your CDs, which is a great kind of risk-free investment there. But just you need to understand what kind of funds or investments your dad's invested into, just so you can understand just your full financial picture. And also, what does that mean for your financial goals? If you're trying to hit a financial freedom number by the time you're 45 or 50, how is that going to help you get there? What kind of accounts you need to contribute to every year to kind of get you to that point. So does that make sense?
For sure.
And the last thing I have is buying a house. Said you want to buy a house. My biggest suggestion, and I'm sure your dad's talked to you about this too, but one of my favorite financial people out there is Ramit Sethi, and he always says buying a house can be a great thing. Just make sure you run the numbers on it. Understand what are your true costs of owning a home. There's not just the mortgage. There's not just the property taxes, insurance. There are maintenance costs. Their taxes can go up. Stuff can break. HOA fees, condo fees, whatever it might be. And most people, when they go into buying a house, they look at it and say, oh, my rent's $2,000, but I can get a mortgage for a place for $2,200. And they think, oh, it's only $200 more a month. I'm building equity. But they don't look at is, oh, that water pipe that just burst is $3,000. Or HOA fees. I mean, I was listening to one of Ramit's podcasts one time, and he said he had a couple on there, I think, that bought a condo, and they didn't know that they had $500 a month in HOA fees. And I'm not sure how you can buy a couple $100,000 condo without understanding that. But that's the issue with home buying right now in America is people glorify it, but they don't understand, hey, these are the costs of home ownership. And I'm all for buying a house. Just make sure you understand your numbers on that. Make sure you know what the true cost of that is going to be, and always be conservative and overestimate. I mean, the first 12 months I was in my house, I had a $3,000 water line break that I had to repair. And then I had a $3,000 tax bill that hit me. And those aren't things that I can just say, hey, I'm not going to pay this. Those are things that I have to fix. So I have running water, and that's something I have to pay so that the county doesn't come after me. So just make sure when you're looking to buy a house, make sure it's on a 5 to 10 year horizon that you want to be in that house. And also make sure that you understand the true costs of homeownership before you make that purchase. So, because it's the largest purchase you ever make in your life, most likely. So make sure you understand how much it's going to cost you and what the different upkeep and maintenance costs are. What financial mistakes have you made in your life?
Just that one the other month.
Carrying the balance for a month?
Yeah. I can't think of any other. I mean, I haven't had any, I don't know, dangerous investments or, I don't know. Yeah. I've always been pretty financially conservative, so I've never even gambled in a casino.
Well, I can promise you if you gamble in a casino, they're going to take your money. I'm not a big gambler, but I've gone to casinos probably 4 or 5 times maybe. And I walk in there with either $100 or $150 or $200, and I walk out when I lose all my money. Don't carry any extra cash in there or a card that I can withdraw money from, because I know the second I walk in there, that money's gone. And so going to casinos knowing that you're going to lose money, and because the house always wins. That's why they're so big and beautiful.
Yeah, it doesn't appeal to me throwing away my money. I'm sure I will one day, but not yet.
It's not all that great. So
yeah, I think it would really tick me off.
What's one thing you kind of wish you knew about personal finance earlier?
Just the credit card stuff, just because it's so necessary here in LA to get a place. Yeah, I wish I had understood credit sooner. And then obviously I wish I'd known about paying it off and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I got one final thing for you, just suggestion moving forward. So budget your money. You make sure you just understand and start budgeting every single month, just because you need to understand where your costs are, what you're spending money on, because you're living in a spot where you're living paycheck to paycheck basically right now, because you are trying to make it as a full-time actress. All for chasing dreams, but you have to put timelines on it. So that's my second suggestion, is put timelines on it for goals that you have to achieve and hit these numbers. And don't be scared to go get a part-time job just to be able to get the bills paid. The last thing I want you to do is start dipping those savings and just continue that cycle for a long time. So and that will also fire you up even more that you got to make it work on the acting side as well to pay the bills. The last thing is just start educating yourself. So learn more about investing. You have a phenomenal resource with your father. Start learning about what he's investing in for you. Start learning about just index funds versus single stocks. Start learning about retirement accounts, just so that you can start setting yourself up for success. I mean, right now, if you start maxing out your Roth IRA, about $7,000 a year from 33 to 67. Do you know how much money you'd have by the time you're 67? You'd contribute $237,000 basically over the next 34 years. So you'd put in $237,000, but you'd have just under $1 million if you're averaging a 7% return. So that means if you start contributing now, then that's going to pay dividends with compound growth. Versus if you wait 10 years to start, if you wait till you're 43 to start, you'd have $400,000. So by starting now versus in 10 years, that's going to benefit you about $600,000 over the next 34 years. So that's where you need to start understanding just retirement accounts, what your dad's investing in for you. You don't have a Roth IRA set up right now. That's probably one of the best places to start, because the money you put in has already had taxes paid on it. But when you withdraw it 30 years from now, it's tax-free money. The government's not going to take any of it. So start looking at those options, start educating yourself, and you'll be well on your way. Right now, you have $100,000 net worth. You have $70,000 in investments. So if you keep the $70,000 in investments, you never touch it again, and you contribute $7,000 a year into the Roth IRA, you'd have $1.7 million by the time you're 67. And that's just contributing $7,000 a year. So that's a definitely achievable spot and goal. And my goal would be, hey, how do you do the Roth IRA and some, and start contributing 15 or 20% of your income as well to these accounts? But at least starting with the $70,000 you have in there right now, and then adding $7,000 more a year, you're going to have $1.7 million roughly when you're 67 years old, which that's accounting for 3% inflation. So if you're getting 9 to 10% annual rate of returns, accounting for 2 to 3% inflation, puts you about a 7% return on your investment every single year, which puts you at $1.7 million, which is not a small amount of money. So
yeah.
How's that sound?
Yeah, talk to my dad.
Awesome. Well, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from chatting tonight?
That I probably need to keep better track of like where my spending is going right now. I know I'm being frugal, but I'm not keeping like a close eye on where all the dollars and cents are going. I'm just looking at like the totals on my credit cards, and then also to ask more about like what my investments are doing right now.